aside from the fact that you couldn't stay away from me for very long.
I know.
What attracted you to the Ira Gershwin lyrics and show?
Well, to begin with, to me, music is about lyrics. I think that Ira was probably one of the greatest lyric writers ever. And he was also a neighbor. He lived one house from me. Agnes Moorehead kept the two of us apart. She lived in the middle. I lived in one side, and Ira lived on the other. And he kept trying to steal my cat, which just annoyed me to death. I had a black cat called Tinkerbell, and he and his wife loved this cat. And they would go down, literally go down to the fish store and buy fresh fish and shrimp. And they tried to blackmail the cat into staying at their house.
Did it work?
Yeah, pretty well.
Did the cat stay there?
Very much so. Tinkerbell loved them. Loved them more than me.
But this is a real Hollywood neighborhood, like it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh my God, no. Let's
Who
see.
all lived there?
On the corner was Joni James. My house was next. Agnes Moorehead was next. Ira Gershwin was next. Rosemary Clooney was next.
A lot of singers.
Jimmy Stewart lived across the street.
Okay.
And then next to him was Jack and Mary Benny. I mean, it was.
And Lucy lived there.
Lucy lived on the corner.
And Jean Crane lived on that street.
Yes.
What a street! Did any of you mingle, or did you?
Well, actually, yes, we did. I mean, there were a lot of. It was when Hollywood, Beverly Hills, was a small town, and actors gave dinner parties all the time, and everybody would come. That kind of community, really, basically, I don't think exists anymore in
well,
Hollywood.
and also there were such great people, and all of the other great people kind of took them for granted because you were all great people. People don't realize that Ira Gershwin. See, everybody thinks that Ira was the little brother of George Gershwin. He tagged along and kind of horned in on his success. That's not true at all.
Not at all.
Ira was 4 years older than George. Ira was writing songs before George ever wrote anything. He published them at a very early age under the names of the other two siblings.
Right.
The brother named Arthur, and then there was a sister named Frances.
Yeah.
And he called himself Arthur Francis. So his early songs that he wrote with Billy Rose and Vincent Youmans and people like that, he called himself Arthur Francis because he was afraid I
didn't know that.
He was afraid if the songs were not good, he would not disgrace the family if it was by Arthur Francis. And then the first Pulitzer Prize for a musical went to Of Thee I Sing by George and Ira Gershwin, and the Pulitzer committee never mentioned George Gershwin. The Pulitzer went to Ira.
Oh my gosh.
He had a career,
I know
that was
he did.
well on the way before.
I know he did, and his lyrics are.
And you've sung a lot of his
I've
songs.
sung almost, I think, every song he's ever written. I just find I find so much heart in what he writes. He never writes trivial kind of.
That makes it easier to interpret lyrics,
of course,
doesn't it?
Of
Yeah,
course.
for a
when you're
singer.
really singing words that have meaning and that have an emotional impact, for me, that's really what it's all about.
Well, one of the things that I have tried to do with this show when I was writing it is I wanted to show the reason it's called Ira Without George is I wanted to show that he had longevity. George died at a very early age, left behind a lot of hits, but Ira had so much ahead of him.
Well, George was in his 30s when he died.
Yes, and Ira was in his 80s when he died. So he had a long career that went 50 years longer. And he wrote with Jerome Kern and Harold Arlen and Harry Warren and Kurt Weill and Vernon Duke. And, he wrote great, great stuff. And not all of these songs are going to be songs that the whole world knows by heart. So it's kind of educational too. To
absolutely. But they're going to know the songs that I'm singing because I like to sing songs that that people know. I love that.
Well, yeah, and the songs that you're doing, should we tell them?
Yes,
them?
Yes.
Well, one of my favorite songs in the world was the last hit song Ira ever wrote, which was The Man That Got Away.
Oh, sure.
From A Star Is Born.
Oh, yeah, The Man That Got Away. And I love My Ship.
And My Ship from the Broadway production of Lady in the Dark.
And I had never sung that song before. And I just
But it's a beautiful
It's
song.
become such a favorite of mine. And of course, you know, The Man That Got Away is...
And you do Long Ago and Far,
Far Away. Yeah.
And Ira
Which
was,
I recorded. I recorded that, and I recorded also The Man That Got Away. So I had recorded 2 of
Well,
his
it's
songs.
funny because Ira always said, I was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. The word away was in all of them. The Man That Got Away, They Can't Take That Away From Me, and Long Ago and Far Away. Lost every time, he said.
Bad luck word.
Bad luck word.
You know.
But
I think it's going to be such an exciting show.
Well, it's
I mean, the
very
artists
musical.
the artists are
wonderful
fabulous,
cast.
and the songs are just wonderful. And you have such terrifically interesting and funny things to say about Ira. I mean, you really tell a story. People really know him.
It's not just a history lesson. I tell things about him in school and things that people don't know.
People walk away
and his
knowing
relationships,
Ira. Yep.
you know, and how he wrote an entire movie for Betty Grable from meeting her at the racetrack.
I know.
You know, I mean, Ira loved the racetrack.
I know.
He would rather go to the racetrack than sit around swimming pools, you know, or working in movie studios.
Yeah.
And Ira wrote an entire movie for Betty Grable when she could have had anybody in the world because they were great gambling buddies. And Ira always picked horses with interesting names because he was interested in words.
Sure.
And Betty always bet on them and won a lot of money.
I was gonna say, and they both lost. No.
Well, they did a lot,
Yeah.
but sometimes they won. But there's some of that.
Yeah.
Because after George, long after George died, and Betty Grable asked Ira to write a movie for her, and he agreed. He thought, gee whiz, I could have any composer to work with in the business, but what about getting out some of the old songs that George left behind? You know, George would write lyrics on toilet paper. He would go to the bathroom and write lyrics on toilet paper and then just stick them in a drawer somewhere. He would write notes on everything.
Oh, I see.
And then Ira had to put words to all of this.
I see.
And so they found something like, I don't know, over 100 pieces of music that were left behind. And he wrote lyrics to all of these songs, and they all ended up in this movie for Betty Grable called The Shocking Miss Pilgrim, including Aren't You Kind of Glad We Did, and For You, For Me, Forevermore, and really good songs. And so that's an interesting aspect to the show, because although it's called Ira Without George, it's a little bit of a cheat because they will hear some George Gershwin.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we all end up singing. The whole cast ends up singing the last song they ever wrote together, which is Love Is Here to Stay.
I know. One of my, and I also recorded that.
That's on one of your. That's
that's
one
of
of your
my
albums,
favorite songs too.
Well, if you're preparing an act, for example, do you often think of the Gershwins? I mean, when you're thinking of
No, I'll
standards?
tell you what I do. When I'm putting an act together, I almost without thinking will have one, if not more, Ira Gershwin songs.
Really?
Yeah, always. Because they're the songs that, to me, have emotional impact. And that's really the kind of singer I am. So that's the kind of music I would sing. I'm not really what you would call a jazz singer.
No, but you are a storyteller.
I'm a storyteller.
And his
he
lyrics
told
tell
great stories, yeah.
They tell stories.
Great stories. So
I think it's
I don't seek him out. His lyrics seek me out.
Right,
That's really
yes,
what happens.
good. And you serve each other.
That's right. Yeah.